value-added markets for soy can open up new revenue streams for no-till farmers. And Jeff is the president. He's going to talk about how you can take advantage of the expanding soybean market. Now, this isn't in the how many of you are going to grow more soybeans next year than you did last year? One. That it? Well, it is to explain the market. And you'll probably explain a little bit more. You may.
My market might expand. I might take it from somebody else.
Well, anyway, so we're glad to have Benson Hill seed Jeff Johnson here.
Thank you. Really excited to be here, particularly talking to no-till audience group. I was thinking back last night as preparing for today. In 1982, this will date me, I was speaking at the National FFA Convention. I was in the regional finals of the extemporaneous speaking contest, and my topic was on sustainability. And I had the audacity in that speech to suggest that the moldboard plow might someday be outlawed. And I got castigated by one of the judges for that comment, that was completely impractical. And I'm excited to be in front of you guys here today to say that last year, over 60% of the acres in our closed system were grown in a no-till system. So I wish I had that judge back to talk to. So anyway, this is fun to talk with you guys. So you may ask, who is Benson Hill? And right after that, you might ask, why should I care? Benson Hill is a little bit unique in that it's vertically integrated in a unique way. We own our own genetics in soybeans and soon to be yellow pea as well. But we focus on output traits in three primary areas of ultra high protein, high oleic, low linolenic oil, and then also specialty proteins, low anti-nutritionals. For example, that would allow a salmon or a trout to use soybean meal without further processing. So we are St. Louis based, so our office is only about 20 minutes from here, but my team is spread around the country. What makes us unique though is we don't only have those output traits. We work with farmers in a closed loop system to grow those crops. We do a full take and an active God contract. We own our own crush facilities as well as some third-party providers we work with. But then we provide specialized food ingredients into the food market. What that means is we're not selling specialty grade. We're selling food ingredients, which means we're creating more value. And I think we have probably the most aggressive premiums in the market. Many of our growers will make well over $100 an acre over what they would make with their conventional option. So what that ends up in is food. And some people think I'm only talking about a meat replacement burger, a meat extension. Not at all. Soy protein is used in many things as just a straight replacement for flour. So for example, what protein isn't just what's at the center of your plate. What happens if you're having a dessert bar and all of a sudden that dessert bar now has 10 grams of protein, or your milk has 10 more grams of protein than what it had before. These are some of the types of things, the products that are outcoming. And so now we're producing this at scale and can we grow fast enough to meet those demands. So let's take a look at a few of those. There's certainly some pressures on our food system. We all know, pardon me, about some of those. I won't quote a ton of statistics for you, but it is interesting some of the supply chain disruptions we saw with COVID, the unfortunate war in Ukraine and what that's done to the oil market. But I thought it was very interesting this last one over here. We now spend more money in the US, almost $2 billion, on diet-related health issues than what we spend on food. Let me repeat that. We spend more money on diet-related health issues than we do on food. And that's very important. What I'm going to show you in the next couple slides are just what are consumers asking us for. Am I blocking you guys from here? Okay. So these are some things that consumers are telling us they're asking for in their food. So obviously they want it to be nutritious. We talk about the difference. We're no longer just feeding the world. I grew up on a farm in southeast Iowa, and my dad was always proud of that statistic of how many people a farmer dealt with. But we're no longer just feeding the world, we're nourishing the world. And so what they eat is very important. You just see protein becomes very important. Traceability, nutrient density, the protein we talked about, but also sustainability. We're hearing more and more from some of the food companies we're selling into that they don't want what's in the ingredient itself, but how it's grown matters and they're willing to pay for it. So quite a bit of information on this chart, but I would just point out what are some of those things that they're saying they want, and why is health so important? Health and sustainability come up over and over, and you'll see some of the factors on the right, whether that be fresh food, we talk about protein, but all the way down to the bottom. Sometimes you guys as farmers have taken out carbon footprint by the way you're producing, and certainly no-till has helped us do that. But we're finding with the food companies, over 40% of their carbon footprint is in the ingredients they take in. But they're adding carbon footprint through the processing steps. So one of the things with our ultra-high protein, I'll show you that in a bit, but we're able to produce that in a soil, take off a soybean that's on a dry weight basis, approximately 50% protein. So when you crush that, you're making soy protein concentrate levels. Let's take the alternative, salmon in Norway, they're buying soy protein concentrate from Brazil. We take this in one step because of the low anti-nutritionals in it, can crush it, make soybean meal, and that one step with the low anti-nutritionals, this salmon can use our product. We can provide it at a much lower cost and about a 70% less water usage and about a 50% less carbon footprint. Okay, so current system is very commodity based. For those of you guys that are still farming, you know you've been successful at it. In many cases, you've had to work on thinner margins in that commodity system and in lowering your cost and trying to market well. But the problem is your grain, when you produce it, and if you produce better than average grain, oftentimes goes into a system that blends it down to commodity level grain, and you don't get rewarded for your management. What we're gonna show you is a way to get you rewarded for that management. So that system has been very successful at creating cheap calories. But if you look in the chart in the upper left, we've grown soybean yields, farmers in North America with soybean yields, over 60% in the last 30 years. That's phenomenal. But at the same time, the chart on the right is we've lost quality. In some cases, up to 4% protein as we've increased that yield. Now, if you ever read the book, Built to Last, it's a classic business book, but they introduce the idea of the genius of the end versus the tyranny of the or. And they talk about great companies don't have to live with those paradigms. We can actually grow quality traits at the same time we increase your ROI per acre. And that's what I want to show you here next. So there are two soy concentrating factories here. Can you see it? Okay. It's only one in the buildings in the background. And that's our Creston, Iowa facility that we purchased last year, where we could make food ingredients, soy flour, white flake, and that's going directly into food ingredients. But the second one's a little more deceptive, and that's a soybean field in front. That has our ultra high protein soybeans that farmer under his management is taking those genetics and is taking off a crop that's upwards of 50% protein. In some places, 53% protein last year coming out of the field, which makes it up to 20% better than normal soybeans coming out of the field. Okay, this is one of our growers, Reed Weiler. It was interesting as we talked to our growers, why would you do this system? And he talked about, you see some of his comments there, but two things came up. It has to make economic sense. If it doesn't make economic sense for you, you can't afford to do it. But number two was what more surprised us, and that was the purpose behind what he's doing. Reed's up in north central Iowa by Garner, Iowa, right off the interstate on the way from Des Moines up to Minneapolis. And he's growing 2.3 maturity soybean that goes right into that aqua market. We have a contract with the largest trout manufacturer or producer in the US, the largest salmon producer in Europe, which is the fastest growing meat. It's faster growing than all meat put together, except poultry, if you take it from that. So it's a really huge market for us as we do that. But I think as we work with those farmers, that purpose that they're saying, they want to be part of reconnecting with consumers. I grew up in Iowa in 1997 before Roundup came out. 70% of the soybean acres in Iowa were sprayed with Pursuit herbicide. And 3 years later, American Scientific didn't exist as a company. It changes very rapidly in the system as we go through that. But as we look at this change, guys are saying, okay, what does that make as an opportunity for me? That technology, while it was great for us as producers, sometimes was perceived negatively by consumers because they didn't see a benefit and there was perceived risk, whether that's real and scientific or not, they perceived it was. And what growers like Reed told us is they like being reconnected with consumers because Because now everything we're working on is an outlet trait that has direct nutritional benefit to a consumer. And they like that purpose of doing something that's better, lowering the carbon footprint of the food system. So, farmers work with us. They say, we've seen new companies come, we've seen new companies go. Why should we in Benson Hill? We are exchanged on the New York Stock Exchange as BHIL, if you want to look us up. But I think what's exciting is the contracts we have in the food system. So we have an exclusive agreement for any farmers in here from Illinois. If you're from Illinois, we have an exclusive arrangement with ADM for our ultra high protein going into their Decatur plant. If you're in southern Illinois, there's harvest over in Utoka. We're up north of Decatur to Weldon on our ultra high protein soybeans. We have, anybody know the Schnucks grocery store chain in Iowa? We have Hy-Vee. Schnucks has 100 stores that's using our oil in their quick fry industry as we go into that. And then Morningstar Farms is our Kellogg's brand, is using that as meat extension. De Novo is that large salmon producer in Europe. So these are contracts. Now we're public. Now we have the contracts. Now I'm charged with, can we get acres fast enough to deliver on these contracts? So we were growing 50% of the time. I've been asked to double our acres this year. So it's really a fast growing market. So what's the opportunity for you guys? 3 different technologies, maturities ranging from 1.2 to 4.4. And when you can expand beyond, if you're in one of those blue shaded areas, I guarantee you there's an opportunity. And if you're fairly close, there's one also. But let's look at each one of those real quick. Zones 1, 2, and 3. You see those maturities of product are 1.2 to 3.4, premiums up to $4.50. Zone 4, which is really going into that ADM program, premiums up to $7. Now, first thing one of my competitors would say, I know that because I worked at a couple of large seed companies before I came to this job, was that's okay, the yield drag will eat up your premium. At a $7 an acre, or pardon me, $7 a bushel premium, how much yield drag would you have to eat that premium? Give me a yield development, somebody shout one out. What's that?
20, 25.
Okay, tell me what your yield developments are. 50, 60, 70, better than that? Okay. I'm gonna, for real simple math, because I'm slow, the last guy before me is an engineer. I'm not an engineer, nor would I ever play one of the TV series. But at 50 bushels, for example, $7 is $350. Pick a commodity price, but if I say $14, how many bushels would you have to be down for that not to pay off? If my math is good, that's somewhere around 25. Okay? These products do not have that significant yield drag. Okay? That's why we talk about the ROI per acre. I have growers making over $200 an acre more. I'm trying to think of a guy that made less than 50 an acre of what he did. Many made over 100 last year. So it's a unique opportunity. How can we do that? We're not selling specialty grade, we're selling food ingredients. Okay, and last one, or 2 more. Southern Indiana, these products can also grow all the way across southern Iowa and into Missouri. A $4 premium on these, very little yield drag at all. 2 to 3 bushels over the top end traded commodity products on the market. And then growing into our Creston, Iowa facility, we can actually grow these a little bit further than that blue box, a $4.50 premium. So with that, if you want to learn more about our programs, we will have opportunities extending on. Our contracting pace is better than last year. We're ahead of that pace, but because we're growing so fast, we still have opportunity. If you're interested in that, I'll stick around a while afterwards. But the website you see here, BensonHillFarmers.com, is where you can go, drop your information, and we can get back to you with that. We got a question back here.
Weed control products.
Weed control products. So I'm not a chemistry salesman, although I've worked for both components and Jenna in my industry. These today are all non-GM. We do have herbicide tolerance in our pipeline. I'm 2 years out from that. And we also have gene edited. So when it comes to technology, I would tell you I'm a merchant, not a missionary. So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you it's not. But everything we do today is non-GM. How many people have grown non-GM in the last 5 years? Okay, quite a few, maybe half the room. That's impressive. Okay, but if you've got a specific weed control problem, we really talk about 3 different control methods as I work with our growers in our program. Certainly there's herbicide options. There's obviously herbicides you can't use in a non-GM environment. We also have guys using cover crops, And I'd say the third is, I've got guys uniquely doing tillage. Now, some of you immediately think of a cultivator. I used to tell my dad I would plant or I'd cultivate, but I wouldn't cultivate what I planted, if you know what I mean. But we see people using the weed zappers. I see a lot of different types. So all three are options that guys work with. You guys say, yeah, but I'm gonna spend more money for weed control, okay? All of a sudden, it's like, how much more? Maybe my program is $30 more. Some of our customers say they're not spending any more. Some spend less. Some spend $30 to $40 more. It depends on what type of system you're using, exactly the economics. Yes?
What's driving the differences in premium between?
Yeah, the question is what's driving the difference in premium? It's two things. One, it's the value of the output product and how much that has in the market. So if you look at high protein, for example, most soybeans would be under 40% on a dry weight basis. You crush them, you're gonna be under 55% in your soy flour or your meal. That's considered commodity meal. There's a premium from 55 to 60. There's a much better premium when you get to high protein soy meal, 60 to 65. But if you get above 65, now all of a sudden you're at that soy protein concentrate functionality. And that's what they use in meat replacement levels of protein. So it's driven by that. It's also driven by what are we competing against. So if I go to Southern Indiana, for example, anybody here from Southern Indiana? Okay, there's a lot of non-GM production that's going down the river to Asia. So I'm having to compete with other non-GM more so than what I'm having to compete with a GM product. So if they're offering a non-variety specific premium, I can pick anything he wants at a certain level, I've got to offer a better deal than that. So it's really a combination of those things, as well as I'd say the third is probably, if there is a yield drag in the product, we're very upfront with that and show that it's got to be a better deal than that. Back and back.
How does seed cost compare to other non-GM?
How does seed cost compare to other non-GMs? I'm going to answer your question very specifically, but I'm also going to say you got to look at the whole program, because mostly last year we offered free seed, so we were better. Most of the time what we're doing this year is we put it into the premium, just so you got to look at the seed cost and the premium together. Fully, what we did, we'll put our base seed price at $46. We have 2 seed treatments. Obviously, if you're putting that in a no-till situation, you want that protected if it's a little colder soil. So we offer Cruiser Max APX on base treatment and a full rate of Saltro for a second. So we charge $10 more for each seed treatment. So the list price there is $56 and $66. Yes, sir.
My complaint is you talk about sustainability and carbon footprint, but when you had your chart up there of what this does for farmer, we're not getting rewarded for any of that.
Absolutely, you actually are. I'm going to point out Dustin right here. Dustin, you want to stand up for just a moment? So, first off, we are rewarding for you because you're making more per acre on this. I talked about guys making $100 to $200 more an acre for this. We also have very specific, so sometimes you're being rewarded just through the premium. There are very specific programs. We have some pilots on carbon credits. There's several different types of programs where you can get rewarded very specifically for that. It also depends on the customer output, whether they're paying for that or not. And that's some of the difference in the premiums you asked me about earlier. It's a great question. Oh, you have to keep me honest on time.
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Okay, other questions?
What about yellow peas?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yellow peas.
The yellow peas, the question was what about yellow peas? Yellow peas are very interesting because like soy protein, they're very high quality protein. And because there's no GM, there are some markets that prefer yellow pea protein. And it's obviously grown in some different footprint. I'd take, for example, the Beyond Burger. They use pea protein, not soy protein. So we have our own yellow pea. We're buying yellow peas today, but we have an approved list that's publicly available yellow peas. We'll have our proprietary genetics in 2 years as well. Yellow peas is interesting. If anybody's ever eaten one of the plant-based burgers, a lot of the people say they're doing it, is what we saw up here. They say they're doing it for health, but if you talk to one of those folks, those aren't healthier. They have such a beany flavor, and it's worse with yellow peas, have a stronger flavor than what soybean does. So they have to add masking agents like salt and sugar to cover that up, and that's why those burgers aren't any healthier than what a beef burger would be, for example. We have stuff in our pipeline where we're knocking out those flavors. That's our next technology coming. And so they don't have to add all those masking agents to cover up that beany grassy flavor. We'll have that both in soybeans as well as in yellow pea. Yes, sir.
What about rejection?
What about are you talking about rejection of grain?
On grain.
Yeah, the question, if you didn't hear it, was what about rejection? So how would something get rejection? It can get rejected in these contracts on a couple of different ways. So one, if it's GM contaminated as a non-GM product, for example. So most of our crush facilities, we either have there or beside them something that can also take that. It's just not gonna get that same premium as a non-GM will. The other is grain quality and can be anything from moisture to foreign material. Mostly we have a discount schedule rather than a rejection schedule.
What about gluten contamination?
The question is, what about gluten contamination? In some of the human food markets, gluten will be, so for ADM, for example, you can pass with one wheat kernel in there, but if you had two, it would reject that from a gluten contamination. Human food, very much so. Europe is very strong on that. We take gluten, we take stuff that has gluten in it, but we have to discount that. That's not true in all of the technologies. So I mentioned 12 varieties. That's really particularly the case with 3 of those varieties. 9, it's not as an issue.
All right, any closing comment for you, Jeff?
No, I thank you. Again, if you're interested, our best premiums are available through the 13th of January. We do have some options after that, but the program won't get any better, and you'll lose some options